don't particularly look after myself in my diet, do yeah, no, I don't. I have been in the last 6 or 7 years, I'll go once a week, and I take blood out of the chips. Yeah, no, I don't. I have been in the last 6 or 7 years, I'll go once a week, and I take blood out of the chips. Yeah, no, I don't. I have been in the last 6 or 7 years, I'll go once a week, and I take blood out of the chips. Yeah, no, I don't. I have been in the last 6 or 7 years, I'll go once a week, and I take blood out of the chips. Yeah, no, I don't. It's good to be getting on that now, that's when you get full be actually getting in spot and the only doctor, she goes through a corner. She's, while he's there, and that's more important to her to have a regular one than this one. Probably the copy of the one of this I'll do it 2 weeks in advance. Alright, you got friends in here? I think you're carrying on behind you. Because I know that it's not always giving evidence that can be something that can be whether it's
I'll open the meeting, councillors. The meeting open. Welcome those present in attendance and advise that the council meeting will be recorded in accordance with council policy entitled electronic recording of council meeting policies. For council to assist in preparation of minutes and ensure a true and accurate account of the debate and discussion that meetings is available. We will now be upstanding for prayers. Prayers tonight will be by John and
Lord God, maker of heaven and earth, we ask that you will bless this meeting of the Circular Head Council tonight. Pray that you'll give them wisdom and guidance in the decisions they make. Please enable them to govern well for the good of all people in this wonderful district you have created. We ask this through Jesus Christ our Lord, who taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, power and glory, forever and ever. Amen.
thanks, John.
Thank you.
Record of attendance. We have Councillor Wood, leave of absence, and everybody else is here. So the confirmation of the minutes of the previous meetings that was held on the 21st of January and the 28th. Thanks, Councillor Riley. Seconded, Councillor Kay. Is any query on the accuracy of the minutes? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. Issues raised by councillors, 3-1, 3-2-0. Are there any questions without notice?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I have one. Probably Julie might be able to pass this one on. I've had a resident from Tema inquire whether we could approach State Growth to limit the speed through Tema down to at least 50 or 60. At the moment it's currently 80 kilometres, with children riding bikes down there in holiday time, and excessive speed throughout that area, through the shacks down there, residents.
I could bring that up at
If they
half
could-
time and meeting to do it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, any correspondence to the board?
Any further questions?
I have one further to my response. wondered if we could compare the $20,839 per year as a collection cost for the rural areas. So if we put a collection point in town, could we compare that to what the proposed cost is for rural areas for either a weekly collection or the recycling? Because for a rural family, a 2-week collection with no recycling, it would give them another option in town. And I think that if you wanted to compare costs, what would it cost for another collection or for a recycling collection, to compare those points? I take on board the contamination point, and I would also ask, what are those kinds of costs going to look like for circular head if we are basing this on comparing costs? And I know that the families that I've spoken to would be well received, and I'd be happy to organise a focus group to help support an awareness program to help put this in place if that should be the way the council decides.
Okay, fine, then obviously we can answer for that next meeting. Any further questions? If not, we'll move to 3, 4. We've got all the answers to questions from last meeting. Councillor Coe.
No.
Oh.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Too hot.
Fair enough.
Sorry, not me.
Mr. Mayor, I just had a question in relation to the question one I raised at last month's meeting. And I thank the general manager for the total cost per kilometre at being $375 per kilometre for roadside slashing and spraying. I would just like to ask a further question. Through visual observation over the last decade, I've seen our service level deteriorate, and just for the community's sake, how can the historical costs remain the same at $375 per kilometre going forward, or over the last decade, if our service level has diminished?
Do some work on that. We'll move right along to 4, declaration procurement or non-procurement interests. Are there any? None. I now need a resolution for items 5, 6 and 7. Is somebody prepared to move it? Thanks, Councillor Harris, Councillor Edlund. Put the motion, all those in favour?
Aye.
It's carried. We'll go through those. First of all, there's the council workshops. Is there any questions on those at all? If not, we'll go to the mayor's communication. Are there any questions on any of those? If not,
Sorry, can I ask about the meeting with Sue Costello in 2016?
2016, she came and talked to me the other day, and then I talked Scott and the general manager and Hannah was talking as well, just giving us a bit more information on the new run of applications for funding, which is going to be for 4 or 5 years, and whether we'd be interested in putting application in. Applications close on the 22nd of March, and so we'll get just a briefing on what is expected and a bit about it, just information on it.
And the Telstra meeting with the Black Spots?
Telstra meeting with the Black Spots. Yeah, that was Paul Patterson. He come up and talked to us about that, and he wanted to know how important the Black Spot program is to this council. Is it high on the agenda or low on the agenda? So I told him it was extremely high in the first couple of points that we'll be looking at the next election, because we've got a number of areas here, and of course a lot of our businesses are in the rural areas, and these businesses now are large, and a lot of people are paying accounts and doing a lot more work than they've ever done before. And so he offered to help write not an application, but give us more information on how to put something in place for the next lot of funding, because it's his interest to get as much funding as what he can for Tasmania, and so he's really looking at areas like ours that have often talked to him about it, to try to get funding for the areas. And so we talked a lot of the areas. He was pretty well aware of most of the areas that we talked about, which is more forest, lower Scottsdale, and all those areas that we talked in the past, and so he's going to be in contact with council in the next little while, because we need to get cascades on so that we've got something in place. Anything further? If not, we'll go to 7, which is nil. 8, which is other questions. Council encourages community participation in its meetings through the opportunity for public questions and statements consistent with Council's core values. Councillors and staff strive to ensure all people are treated with courtesy, fairness, dignity and respect. And we expect our residents and ratepayers to apply similar standards in dealing with councillors. As Mayor, it is my responsibility to maintain the orderly conduct of council meetings and determine whether a question or statement is out of order due to use of offensive, objectionable or defamatory expressions. I ask members of the public to show proper consideration and courtesy in these comments. And I intend to give everybody the opportunity to ask questions if they wish. Not everybody will probably want to ask questions, but if they do, and then if there's still time for people who have already asked 2 questions, we can deal with those as well. Come to the front, state your name. Are there any questions?
Well, I think, Mr. Mayor, my name's Trevor Spinks, as it always has been. I have a question, and firstly, Mr. Mayor, just want to thank the staff for the way they promptly answered my queries from last week. I was very impressed when I heard the letter from the General Manager today. And, yeah, it's just great to see things being followed up. So whoever's responsible, thank you. I've got a question regarding the information board, which is located on Britton's Road, north of the hospital. I've noticed that the information relating to telephone contact numbers on the information board is totally out of date and mostly irrelevant. I even noticed that my father-in-law's number was there and he hasn't taken any calls since he passed away some years ago. So my question is, whose responsibility is the upkeep of these signboard? And
through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd take that one on notice and follow up.
Yeah.
Because I'm not quite sure who installed the board initially.
thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Melissa Wells. According to the Local Government Act 1993, in tabling a petition, a general manager who has been presented with a petition or receives a petition under section 1B is to table the petition at the next ordinary meeting of the council. This evening I would like to table a petition that I have had going since the 7th of the 1st, 2021. The title is The Land Sale of the Council. The subject matter is, why was the 15.8 hectare block on Grant Street, Smithton, owned by council not put up for public sale? The action sought by the petition is for a community meeting. I have gathered signatures up the street and I've also walked around and spoke with a lot of people in the community. And I have 295 signatures on my petition. So I'd like to table that this evening if that's okay.
That's okay.
Now to my questions. I received a letter dated the 18th of February, and it's in regards to the planning document with the Agritas Trade College Trust Unit application, and it's in regard to particular point 2 and 3, and they are in regards to the landscape plan that should have been in place to show that there will be trees along the northern and eastern boundaries of Grant Street, Smithton, and along the portion of the northern boundary of 12 Nelson Street shared with the general residential zone. The landscape plan shall identify species details, the intent of the plantings to be provided to buffer from cattle grazing and associated pasture management within the site. Point 3, all landscaping and planting is to be completed before the permitted use may commence and is to be maintained in accordance with the approved plan to the reasonable requirements of the Director of Infrastructure and Developmental Services. And the explanation I've received is that Condition 2 has been complied with and Condition 3 is outstanding, and that they will have Condition 3 finished by autumn due to better conditions for establishment. The pathway to achieving compliance with the permit condition is considered reasonable. No enforcement measures are required at this time. So it's considered reasonable that the members of the community should have to put up with the smell that I personally smelled today while I was outside that dairy, because there is no trees there. Does this count? Do you think that that is really acceptable? I find that letter hard to comprehend. That the actual commencement of this was supposed to be before the construction phase of the landscape plan, and it was constructed in June last year. It is now February, and it is open to the public and will be on Sunday having an open day.
Pass it on to the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In relation to the conditions, we have had a response from the applicant for that particular development. They've indicated their procurement timelines in relation to securing the materials and plantings for that particular condition compliance, and they have indicated that that will be done as indicated in your letter in response in order, which is in line with when they're able to procure those particular plantings. They've had the materials on order for a substantial period of time, but they haven't been able to secure them at this point.
So that's just it.
In terms of giving the applicant an opportunity to complete those works, the assessment team has considered that that is reasonable, given that they haven't been able to secure the materials to actually undertake that work.
What's the point of this document then?
I will take that question on notice and be prepared to have a conversation with you in relation to the background for those particular conditions.
No worries, thank you very much. Yep. My next question is in relation to the land sale. And I received a letter, and it states here from you that the question I put forward, the question is who paid for the implementation of the pasture and water infrastructure on the land related to the previous authorised lessee of the 15.8 hectares? The answer you've given me is that the question on the implementation of pasture and water infrastructure on the land relates to the previous authorised lease use of the land that did not expire until the sale of the land as referenced in item 1 of Council's resolution. Therefore, the authorised leaseholder was able to make the decisions based upon their own determination of merit prior to the time of lease expiry. So the property wasn't purchased until the 23rd of December, and this infrastructure was put on it beforehand. Who in their right mind would put on infrastructure of something that they hadn't been guaranteed to buy in the first place? Does that not seem a little bit incorrect?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, in terms of those circumstances, the resolution clearly identified that the lease was in place until the purchase was concluded. So a person can make that decision based upon its own merits. And that question would be better directed to the person who held that lease at that particular point in time.
All right, no worries, I'll forward it to them. And I just had one more question, is that all right?
Yeah, that's okay.
I was wondering why you, Darryl, the Mayor, didn't attend the meeting held by Chan at the community centre when I attended the UPSC's meeting the night before and Samuel at the UPSC's meeting at Agritas. I was just wondering why you didn't attend the one at the community meeting.
I sent a response back to say that I had a previous commitment, which was a council workshop, and asked that in future, when you have those meetings, because it's important that we find the information out that they were presenting, I asked that they please contact us, and Kim said yes, we would, and we should have checked with council to see whether there was a meeting on that night, and there was. And I did talk to two of our councillors who attended the part of that meeting. And they came back and gave us an update of the discussions taking place. I talked to Kim and she knew that before.
I'm not actually part of the group, I just attended the meeting as a
when
member
you
of the
asked me, so I'm
community.
just saying what had happened. And so they gave us a comprehensive update on what was discussed so that we had more idea of what was being done. They are going to talk to us in future if they have a meeting, and as many councillors that haven't got a meeting will certainly come. And she did apologise that she didn't think of contacting us about it.
All right, no worries, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Young Stokes from Forest. Why did the council not support an application for the listing of the Robbins Island passage to Ramsar?
Through you, Mr Mayor, that one's a little bit before my time. We'll take that one on notice to get back to the inquiry.
And would the council support a new application to the listing of Robbins Island passage to Ramsar due to the public change in its stance to the listing?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'd have to have the history to be able to answer the second question.
Yeah.
Certainly happy to provide a response.
We did do a number of things a few years ago with Ramsar, and I'm just not sure of the process that we need to do with that, so we probably need to check that out again.
Yep, no worries. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Melissa Lockley. I received a letter in the mail about Teeny's Road, and it said that there were 6 to 7 small potholes on the eastern end, most at the creek. The day that they actually filled the holes, I counted 50 odd potholes they had filled, so I don't know where they got 6 or 7 from. I have been taking photos of the holes, and 3 days after they were filled, they were already back again. And I also, on the letter, it also said the road's in good condition. No, it's not. If you guys had to drive up it every day, I'm sure it'd be fixed really quick, because it's actually buggered my car. I won't say what I was going to say. But yeah, it's actually buggered my car, and I'm at the stage that if it's not fixed, I'll get it fixed and I'll just send you the bill, because I shouldn't have to fork out for damage done to my car from your roads that you're supposed to be responsible for fixing.
So what's your
Plus,
question?
when is it going to be done properly?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'd take that on notice because I'd have to speak to the Manager of Works and Services.
Because not only is there potholes, there's ruts and there's washout from the rain, and there's just the road, in some corners you've got to go about 5 kilometres to go around them because your whole car just shakes. And they just slashed the roads and they've left half of the grass there. It's not even done properly in some places.
Okay, we've taken it on notice and we'll have to do some more inspections on this.
Alright, thank you.
Thank you. No further questions? We have the follow-up correspondence with the questions, which we've dealt with. Now go to 9.1, notice of motion, Councillor Lizard.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Because of further information received on Monday, I'll present to the council an alternative motion, which is Circular Head Council resolved to 1. Have confirmation from Acre Health on the intention to purchase the residential property at 2A John Street, Smithton, within 30 days by submitting an unconditional contract of sale to the general manager. 2, if no unconditional contract is submitted for endorsement by the general manager within 30 days, council will reconsider the earlier resolution. 3, acknowledgement upon sale of the property at 2A John Street being confirmed, Circular Council will hold the proceeds of the property sale to enable this resource to be used in supporting specific purpose regional buildings in conjunction with state or federal government funding to activate a youth emergency crisis housing solution to assist with the current homeless youth in the Circular Head area. 4, immediately engage with local youth network service providers to quantify the service background data and demand the youth crisis housing in the local area. And 5, seek immediate discussions with the State Minister of Mental Health Services to activate delivery of a new locally based youth emergency crisis housing solution.
Thank you. Could I have somebody second this?
Thanks, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Rationale is behind this is during our council, at the end of our council cultural awareness training session held back on the 4th, the topic of local homelessness was raised and discussed by the council's president. This was intended to what we were there for. The discussion raised a number of issues of youth self-harm and current experience with public vandalism, and all as a symptom of a broader community issue of no safe places for youth at risk to stay. The limited alternatives for youth unable to find safe accommodation locally is beyond the reach of the local community, with the services available at the regional level often deemed inappropriate or inaccessible. There are some other issues that are more specific, which quite frankly, in that discussion, which quite frankly was very sad. And as a member of a community which I have great pride in, I simply cannot walk past that without seeing if we can do something. I don't know whether anything can come out of this, but we must make an attempt. I commend that motion to the council.
Thanks, Councillor Albers. Any further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 10, there are no planning authority tonight. So we'll go on to 11.1, draft public art policy.
Mayor and Councillor, so we have been out to for comment on our draft public art policy guidelines and advisory group operating procedures. With the comments were that consultation went for 42 days. There was a desire for it to be at comment for longer than the norm 21 days. In that time, we received 2 responses, which are included in the report, and there are some suggested changes and some comments about what we've done with those comments that have come back. Overall, those comments were really supportive of the public art policy. We will, should this be adopted tonight, we will put a submission forward for a funding amount in the budget for the next financial year to support the public art policy, and that group to be able to commence some works around the Circular Head area. Just reading from the public art policy, I just wanted to say that public art can create a unique opportunity, a unique community identity that forms or enhances a sense of place and can generate iconic branding of an area. The policy and associated guidelines and procedures will provide a framework to enable council to contribute to, support and promotion of public art to reflect and enhance Circular Head's cultural, natural and built heritage. I commend the report to you.
Thank you. We have a recommendation, is somebody prepared to move that?
And I'll second that, Mr Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Hosky, Councillor Kay. Is any discussion required? Has been discussed in a couple of workshops.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I think the extended period of time through the old September month was there to give the arts community an opportunity to comment. Disappointing that we only got 2 responses, but as long as those responses are beneficial, that'll be good. It also tidies up what the council's control of what community expectation is of what art and structures and goes on in our community. So I think in moving this recommendation, I think that it's good to have that as a reference.
Thank you. Any further speakers? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. 11.2, request for easement and access licence over Port Ladder landfill site. Please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors were briefed on this matter a week or so ago in relation to a request to have an electricity easement for the Port Ladder wind farm, which was approved a couple of years ago now. The easement would go through alongside Council's internal roadway at the landfill and connect to the Port Ladder substation, so that's considered an entirely reasonable request. The second part of that is to a request for an access licence to use for the transport of components used in the manufacture of those wind farms, which is for oversized or over-length vehicles using the internal roadway. With that, we've had some independent evaluations conducted for the compensation for the value of the easement and also for the access licence on an annual basis. At the moment, that's just been recently adjusted, which I've advised council of through some changes to the access design that was submitted just this week. So with that, I'm seeking the council's endorsement to authorise the general manager to finalise those negotiations and those licences. So I present that for council's consideration. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Somebody prepared to move the recommendation? So moved. Thanks, Councillor Holder-Acker, and second, Councillor Blizzard. Is there any further discussion required? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. We move to 11.3, boundary fence contribution policy.
Thanks for Mr Mayor. In front of you, councillors, is an updated boundary fence contribution policy. The minor changes to the revision there are reformatting into the new organisational policy format, a clearer scope section to better identify where it applies and where it doesn't, a more specific definition of what constitutes a standard fence that the contribution will be based upon, and an application form to clarify and standardise the information to help guide the customer as to what information council needs to make the agreement with adjacent landholders. So I present the revised boundary fence policy recommended for adoption.
Thank you. Councillor Holder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've got one question just to ask this boundary fence. Does this have any effect on us where it's internal fences? Won't be to deal with roadways or anything like that. But will this have some effect on, say, people like Taswater, where their fences are internal with neighbouring properties? Will it have any effect on how they're portraying in the present?
Through you, Mr Mayor, no. The intent of the Boundary Fences Act itself is pretty specific as to obligations of neighbouring landholders. This policy itself gives guidance to the community and for officers as to the standard of fence to negotiate around. So it won't have an effect upon Taswater, given we have no direct authority over their land and negotiators that might have with adjacent landholders.
Thank you, sir. Move this to accept the recommendations. So,
Thank you. Deputy Mayor second, thank you. Any discussion on this one?
Mr. Mayor, just as a point of interest, comes up with a policy on the planting of trees on roadside reserves outside on the roadside of the boundary, and would that be covered in something like this?
It'll be separate.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd suggest a separate matter. I don't believe we have a current policy of that nature. We've certainly had a landscaping plan for Smithton, and I understand there's some interest in looking at further scoping of that work, but it's not contained within this policy.
Well, my concern was out in the rural areas where farmers have planted for obvious cost reasons on the roadside of the fence, and 50 years later when the trees are fallen over, it becomes our expense. So just be aware of it.
For clarity, Mr. Mayor, there are many sections in the Local Government Highways Act, and a lot of them deal with vegetation roadside and on property boundaries. So we could work through some of those at the workshop that night, perhaps.
Anything further? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Move on to 11.4, budget amendment. I'll hand over to Development Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, this matter was workshop with councillors over the last couple of weeks, resulting from consultation from the local provision schedule. It was identified that further work was required in the area of city protection. It was workshop with the council at that time, and it was supported that we look at undertaking a city protection strategy. Council officers prepared a project plan for that and hypothesised that it would cost approximately $80,000 in 2 stages, roughly a 20-60 split. We've since gone to tender on the strategy to consultants, and it's come back that it's more a 40 split or a 50 split, if you know what I mean. Therefore, we're asking for a budget amendment to bring forward some of that cost into stage 1. Therefore, a budget amendment to include $43,857 for stage 1 of the senior protection strategy, and then stage 2 would come in the following financial year and be approximately $40,000. For your consideration, councillors.
Thank you. Councillor Rowland, you go.
Waiting for Rick prepared to move it.
Would you like to move?
I would.
I'm observant sometimes. Not all the time. Is there any discussion or questions on this one?
I just wanted to commend the council officers for the speed with which they've been able to put this together. I think it's a really important topic for the area. Going forward, it's an overarching thing, and as fast as things can move in local government, I think they've done really well for bringing this to us so soon and to get the actions needed to put it in place.
Thank you.
Just to follow on, Mr. Mayor, what Councillor Edmund was mentioning is that, and also Ashley, is through the local precision schedule, the community, I suppose there was concerns with this, so it's great to see and commend the council staff for being at the floor and trying to tackle some of the community's needs at this present time.
Any further discussion? Debate? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? Carried. 12.1 financial reports.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Before you, we've got the financial reports for the period ending 31st of January 2021. On page 116, we have received 2 applications for the first homeowners grant, acknowledging 21 in total for the year, which is pleasing. The closing funds also on that same page for the area management committees are listed. On the next page, we have the comprehensive income statement, profit and loss statement. Halfway down the page, We have a surplus deficit from operating activities currently a little bit over 3 million compared to a budgeted loss of 1.1. In February, this next week, we'll have our last rates instalment collection. So apart from financial assistance grants, that's probably about the only other major source of income that will come through between now and June. So we'll see that surplus decline over to that budgeted figure as we approach 30 June. In terms of the statement of financial position, balance sheet, we've got total community equity of 228 million. We currently have investments that are just at call, a bit over 9 million at a rate of 0.1%. In terms of receivables, we've got a balance outstanding of 1.3 million, which is 11.46 of what we've raised for the year. In terms of sundry debtors, we have 446,000 compared to 303, and as I've explained before, that's a lot to do with timing differences as we invoice for grant funding and things like that. We currently have a total cash balance of 18.3 million, and we've got the cash and investment graph there for comparison. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll present the report for Council's consideration.
Thank you. Prepared to move the recommendation?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor, second Councillor Redland. Any questions or debate? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. 12.2, the quarterly financial reports.
Well done, thank you, Mr. Mayor. These are the quarterly reports for the period ended 31st of December 2020. I won't go through them in any detail, just that there's quite a few areas of council which are based on service areas, and that there's quite a bit of detail in there. So I think I'll just present the report, Mr. Mayor, and take any questions from councillors from there.
Are there any questions first, councillors? Questions? Somebody prepared to move the report?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Blizzard second, Councillor Foster, Councillor Blizzard. No discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. 12.3, Senior Manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In relation to the report presented for councillors' information, under the governance section, I draw your attention to the resource sharing update report up to the 31st of December. There's a number of actions there that are proceeding. Dare I say we're building on the outcomes that we achieved last year, and there's still some good progress happening there. Under the community banner, there's the reference to their Healthy Tasmania grant, Nourish Community Lunches, which is progressing quite well. The next community lunch event will be held in Harmony Week in March. The communities team will be promoting that through our comms process. Australia Day Awards went off with an absolute success. Congratulations to all those who received awards, particularly Christy and Gary Hingston. There is information there in relation to the Celebrate Australia Day home packs, given it was a COVID-safe event. The summer break activities also went reasonably well. There was some extreme weather conditions on Friday, the 29th of January, which cancelled the outdoor moving. Most people will be aware we had a fair bit of rainfall in that period. The Mayor's Education Fund has been concluded and the awards presented, which was a great outcome for everyone. Healthy Tasmania grant is progressing well. There's some information there. Small community grants were launched on the 20th of January and closed on the 28th of February, so there's roughly 1 week left for the community to submit any grant applications they desire there. 10 days on the island. If these halls could talk on Friday, the 5th of March at 7 p.m. My understanding is that's been very well subscribed, if not sold out, over in Stanley. Free event management mini workshop was undertaken, which was successful. There's some notes there in relation to the youth and chill activities. great to see some programs rolling through there. In terms of 7up, the centre will open when they find a successful candidate to be able to operate that facility, which I understand has been actively worked on. Emergency management, there's nil in that section. Tourism, you'll notice the graph that Kim's provided there in terms of the report. Dare I say, Tasmanians are doing the heavy lifting when it comes to the visitor economy in our part of the world at this point in time. You'll note there that there's some repairs to be done to the photo frame in Stanley, and we're working on some drafts in relation to a Western Explorer brochure to actually link Stanley to Strawn in preempting some of the positive things that could be happening in that particular part of infrastructure development. Also, response there to Councillor Popovsky's question in relation to breakdown of maintenance costs. The public information bulletin contains information, particularly of interest is probably number one there, the place names advised by the nomenclature board in relation to a couple of locations within our district and wider further around the state. I would present the report for Council's consideration, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any questions on any of those points?
I just want one small note. When Kim's putting the brochure for the Western Explorer, can she indicate the toilet facilities? Soil toilet paper is our main rubbish problem down over the Arthur River, besides all the long next to me. Forebearers probably through. But in fact, you get the toilets listed.
Anything else?
Just Mr. Mayor, we've had an update. 7up will commence next week. So they haven't secured someone for the position yet, but each of the stakeholders in the delivery of 7up are going to provide some additional staffing support so that the centre can get open for 2 days a week, and that'll start next week.
Thank you. That's good. Nothing else?
It's just the other question. I think for the first time we've got a maintenance breakdown where the maintenance that we're doing is being earmarked. Are these ones that you've are shown, are they all authorised by the maintenance officer or some of them by the works department?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there would be a combination. Like, for example, where you've got the Smithton Sports Centre, there's a combination there, but also the rec grounds, particularly in relation to some of the vandalism that's been occurring, there'd be action by both parties.
And this would be outside the normal day-to-day operations that they need to do to.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Anything further on the chair's report? Not somebody prepared to move the recommendation. Thank you.
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
Council Blizzard and the Deputy Mayor was next.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. Got 13, we're doing the minutes of the committees, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Only 3.
Only 3.
That's right, there's somebody that would never, I was counting them as well. Councillor Oldacre, moved, seconded by
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Cade, you've got in this time. I'll put the recommendation, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. Now we'll go through each one. Western Area Management Committee for a start. Is there any queries on that? We need to be aware of, Councillor Oldacre?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I need to just draw your attention. I've done with it in minutes, but they had a meeting with the minister
Fire.
about the fire station, and that is proceeding very slowly. It might be that you, Mr. Mayor, might have to apply a bit of pressure for that to get that certainly get that done, because you can't have vehicles sit somebody else's shed or sitting outside because it doesn't have vehicles on it at all, so we need to be on it.
I know we did talk to the minister last time he was down on that and told him that there was vehicles in other people's sheds or whatever, it wasn't. So,
Through you, Mr Mayor, an update that happened today is that we've had contact from the Minister's office and the lead architect. We're having conversations next week in relation to the project to keep that moving along for understand the urgency.
nothing else on Western?
I just had one, Mr Mayor, just wondering, with the sign that's been removed from Netley Bay there, is council going to put, is that council's responsibility to put a new sign on it?
From what I'm saying,
But there are no
Parks and
camping
Wildlife-
signs.
Parks and Wildlife, we're not responsible for that. Has the committee written to Parks and Wildlife?
Through Mr Mayor, I don't know whether they've written to, or I can't answer that question, but I do know that there was some talk that the Art Environmental Committee should probably address it as well. So I did speak to a member of the Art Management Committee and told them we get the sort of thing, because what's happening, people are going down their camp and then leaving the rubbish there, and that's causing some damage to them. So
It's not in the Art Pond.
but that sign had disappeared over, they took the no off it to start with, right, so then it was just camping, now the camping piece is gone, so, they got very, don't know what the word is, I just got
I was just wondering whether we should have written to Parks and Wildlife.
Well, it's probably not her.
Just telling them, advising them that the no camping sign has been removed and we would like to see it replaced. And we can deal with it next week.
And Mr Mayor, can't you camp on Crown Land?
You can in some areas, but not in wherever you like. I understand.
Who makes that judgment?
Well, it's not our land, so I'm not sure. I know that there's designated camping areas in the Parks and Wildlife. I understand you can't camp wherever you like. I don't know. You might know more than that.
There's 50,000 acres they camp where they want to,
I don't know. I haven't got an answer to that.
No, I don't know who made the decision. No camping. It's a nice spot.
Probably no facilities there, but then some camping people make their own facilities on that. Any further discussion on Western area? We'll move on to Stanley Town Hall. Is there anything on that?
And that, Mr Mayor, for you, that if any councillors are in Stanley and have the opportunity to look at the movie posters, they've done an incredible job to have the posters all framed and they'll be placed around the walls. Excellent.
Thank you. Circle and Heritage Select Committee. Need to be aware of Councillor Boston.
No, they're going well, Mr Mayor, and they're putting together for the council for the transition from the old to the new.
Okay, nothing else in councillors? If not, we'll move to the second line of public questions if there's any other questions that needs to be asked. Nothing else?
Hi, my name's Melissa Wells. In light of this week's Chronicle, there is a story in regards to Agritas safety plan questioned. In breach, the development at Agritas were found to be in breach of the provided safety framework with no workplace health and safety management plan and project manager Paul Arnold not having his white card. In light of that, with the new Heritage Centre, is Paul Arnold likely to be the project manager on that?
I don't think so. I don't know.
Through Mr Deputy Mayor, it's an Agritas board decision to be made, but my understanding is that they will have a lead project consultant involved in that process.
So is that it?
I don't know, it's an Agritas board matter.
But is not the Heritage Centre and Visitor Centre Council involved also? Like,
No.
Not at all?
No.
No? But as a council, I did approach the mayor when he was doing some fencing on the property and told him that I did have some concerns about workplace issues, and that was back in June, when the investigators visited on 2 occasions in July and found them to be breaching these workplace safety things. What was it that you did, Matt, to look into that on my behalf as a community member?
I can't answer that.
I beg your pardon?
I can't answer that here. I mean, you can talk to me about it outside the council, but not in here. Because I'm a board member of Agritas, I cannot answer that.
So I come to you, the mayor of our community, with concerns about workplace safety breaches that have been quite evidently proved, and you can't do anything about it.
If I'm involved, I can do things about it as a board member, but not as a council.
Do you think that you should step off the board then?
Just hold on a second, Liz. That's a question for Agritas, not for council. This is not a council matter in regard to...
I approached Darryl Quillen, the mayor of the Circular Head municipality, about issues I had with workplace safety incidents in our community with a contractor that was here in our community. Is that not a valid
all them sort of questions need to go to workplace standards, not to council. In regard to workplace safety, unless it's on council land, I think I'm right in saying that.
That is correct, Mr. Deputy.
In regard to, if it's on council land, we've got a responsibility. If it's not on council land, it becomes a workplace incident, therefore work safe.
But up until the 23rd of December, council was leasing property to that.
Not that section of land though.
Well, it's a whole development, is it not?
No, but it's not our land, therefore we have no control over what happens on that land.
So in short, the mayor can't answer a question of a community member who has issues with workplace safety incidents happening in her community.
Well,
It doesn't matter whose land it's on, that he can't answer that question to me.
I'll give you that, that's right.
Okay, no worries, thank you
It'd
very
be
much.
the same if it was an industry out there that had a workplace issue. You wouldn't go to the meeting, you have to go to the workplace to get that. It's
The man
same
was
deal.
doing fencing on the property at the time. That's why I approached him.
So what? That's a separate, it's not a council matter. I'm sorry.
No worries, thank you.
Any further questions? If not, we need a motion. Item listed below. Thanks, Councillor Rose. Yes, Deputy Mayor. I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Aye. Carried. 15-2, closure of the meeting to the public. You'll move it? Councillor Owen, second it. The motion, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.